Hi, it's Ian from the Postal Hub Podcast.
And Marek from Last Mile Experts.
And we are the Last Mile Prophets. This is the last word on the last mile. Marek, some massive news. We've all read the headlines about InPost or Advent. Which is it? InPost or Advent?
Well, I say it's more Advent, to be fair. But we'll explain why in a mo.
Well, so there's been a massive float on the stock market. It involves the last mile, it involves parcel lockers. So our friend Rafael at InPost is probably a very happy man right now, Marek.
I think he's a very happy and very rich man right now.
So InPost floated on the Amsterdam stock market.
Correct.
Just recently, and $3.4 billion is the figure for the IPO. Now,
for only part of the company.
So that was the first thing. Is that for the whole case, for the part of the company?
It's for part of the company. And honestly, not so long ago, most people would have said 3.4 billion is a pretty good price for the whole company.
Well,
bearing in mind,
I was going to say, it wasn't prior to the float. There was talk about the value. So just can you remember what that was, Marek?
The rumours were around about 2, which everyone considered to be crazy. But then if we put that in perspective, if I remember correctly, the deal for Hermes, which is a huge organisation, giving Advent, I think, 75% of the UK market, 25% of the rest. Somewhere I read, I think that was around about $1 billion. So, put the two in perspective. You've got Hermes, multi-country, huge organisation. You've got InPost, which is, yes, a very successful big company in Poland. But, $1 billion compared to the sort of, $3.4 billion for just 35%. Wow.
So let's put this in context of what it might mean for the delivery market in Poland, first of all, and then in, I suppose, Western Europe or Central Europe. Starting with Poland, though, how many lockers does InPost have at the moment? Is it like around 10,000, or is it more than that now?
Oh, Mr. Kerr, this has been moving very, very fast. 12,500 plus now, which makes it the biggest market, I believe, in Europe and probably the biggest outside of China.
So 12,500 in just Poland, and there's a bit over 1,000, if I recall correctly, in the UK, and various other bits and pieces.
Something in Italy.
Yeah, there's some bits and pieces around in other parts of Europe. So with this IPO, does that mean that InPost can really focus on expanding through the rest of Europe?
Yeah, I think background. Let's take a step back, look at the background, and it's be quite interesting. This company, around about 5 years ago, was virtually bankrupt. It was bought for a song. You asked me earlier, Advent or InPost, and the truth is, Advent were behind a lot of the developments. I mean, I have my little brick in it, in the sense that I helped Advent when they were making the acquisition and was involved, at least initially, with the strategy and so on. But the fact is, Advent put in resource, put in structure, put in strategies, put in prioritization, and they did a pretty good job of it. In fact, they did a very good job of it, looking at where we are now. Brought the company to a position where it's very focused. It is a dominant player. In some ways makes me want to cry, because when I left DPD Poland, it was a dominant number one. Now, according to the prospectus, it shows that InPost is about double the size in volume of DPD. So, wow. But then there's the question, okay, what next? Where did people see the value? And I think 3 things, and you can challenge me. Number 1, e-commerce. This is the one you won't challenge me on. E-commerce going through the roof. Everyone can see that it's happening, and that growth, even if it's not as fast as it is, will be maintained. I think the second thing is the fact that with all this money and with the experience they've got, they can replicate networks in other markets, and very few players have got that financial clout and that knowledge and skill set. And then the third thing, which is, I think, the ace that Advent have up their sleeve, is Hermes, because it's very complementary. So in the UK, they only have 1,000 lockers, but if you add, I think, was it 4,000 or 5,000 Hermes points to the 1,000 lockers, suddenly you've got a network that's almost the size of Collect Plus. Interesting.
It is interesting, especially in what's likely to happen in the UK market in the coming couple of years. There's been a few developments in the UK. But let's just quickly come back to Poland, first of all. You mentioned Poland, the size of the market there, and how dominant, let's say, InPost is. But the news almost at the same time as this IPO was about Amazon. Have the rumours finally come to fruition? The rumours come to fruition? Anyway, you know what I mean.
Well, I know what you mean, and I'll say almost, because in classic Amazonian form, they've now announced they're coming. They haven't said when. But I think now it is no longer a question of saying imminent. It's now going to be, I believe, weeks, maybe months, because they've already several weeks ago and months ago, we saw they were hiring people. They've been canvassing potential sellers on a Polish site. So I think it's happening. But it gets even more interesting. Because
How's
on
that?
top of that, almost at the same time, Alibaba announced that they're going to be setting up lockers, and there was an ad out for a locker specialist.
Right, I did read that, yes.
Allegro, not so long ago, same thing. So, Poland is going to become one huge locker market. Maybe not the 400,000 the Chinese have got, but wow.
Well, I was going to ask, at what point does Poland reach saturation? But not yet. It's clearly the answer.
My feeling is that they've got about 12. My feeling is probably you can get to about 20. And the question then will be, do they get smart and open it up or not and leave it closed? In which case, you've already got DHL, DPD, Polish Post.
Make sure you check our video on this, everybody, but I think I'm pointing in the right direction here or there. I'll put the link. I can never remember which way to point, to a recent video we did on closed versus open with particular focus on what's happening in Poland. If you look outside of Poland then, could InPost become the preferred partner for someone like Amazon? Because Amazon's been pushing its own barrow in creating its own parcel locker network to some degree of success, you'd have to say. And you see lockers in places like Germany, like Italy, very much Amazon branded lockers. Could InPost's, now flushed with cash, be ready to get out there and build its own networks across across France, for example, which has got to be another big market?
Exactly. I believe if they use that money well, they could become the premium network. And, first of all, Amazon will work with anyone that will enhance customer experience. Even if they have their own, it doesn't stop them working with someone else. So if you take the UK as a great example, we understand a lot more than we thought, around about 3,000 to 4,000 machines. That's still nowhere near enough to satisfy the UK market. So they will work with other players. In a market like Italy, they'll be working potentially directly and indirectly with InPost because, if I understand it correctly, most, if not all, of Italian Post's machines are InPost machines. So, which, by the way, could preclude InPost from coming in themselves. But without any doubt, the fact that they've got the money, the skill set, the potential cooperation with Hermes makes it a very, very exciting place to be. And, from Advent's perspective, they've made a double whammy because not only do they have all the benefits here, but once they get the integration, which the way they've made this deal work, I think they're going to control it because they've only sold 35%. Once that happens with Hermes and they get the benefits out of that, it's going to be very, very interesting.
And when we talk about Hermes then, the question's got to be asked. It operates in very competitive markets as well. So what's next there?
It depends. And as usual, I'll say it depends on what. I wouldn't be surprised if Advent have already prepared discussions or have some kind of call option on the remaining shares. They're flushed with cash now. And if they were smart, they'll have done that before this IPO. So can you imagine if they have a call option for another, 2 or 3 billion, which is a fraction of what they've spent here or raised here. Sorry, it's what they raised here, but a fraction of the value of the company. It becomes really, really interesting. So I don't know. It could be either that they just buy a complete controlling stake in the whole of Hermes and then effectively integrate the two organizations and have something absolutely vast that becomes a network of the ilk of DHLs or DPDs. Wow. Or something else. So, and the something else will depend on the deal, in my opinion, that they struck with the Otto Group, the shareholders of Hermes.
So comment below, everybody. Is InPost set to go head-to-head with the likes of DHL and co. and become a genuine pan-European player? Could they go beyond Europe? Well, we know already there's some InPost lockers outside of Europe. But we've run out of time, Marek. So comment below, everybody. Marek Różycki, thanks for being on Last Mile Profits today.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everyone.